Okay, and I'll put those to one side. And we're going to do that again with another pair of charms. I've got these little enamel cats. Now these ear wires come in different colors. I'm using silver here because the dachshunds and the edges of the cats are silver. Now the cats are a little different because the back is just plain. So I'm going to have to be careful which way around I put them on so that they hang with the pretty part out. So I take the ear wire and the pliers on there and I twist down gently and I pick up the charm and I put it over the hook and I twist it back up so it meets and it hangs right. So we'll do that for the other one. There you go. So just a simple charm is very easy, as you can see. Takes a little bit of practice not to break the twist too hard and break the ear wire. I did one of those just last week. You got to be careful. But what if you want to do beads? And now I've got some beads here, some cute little penguin beads and some black and white ones that I'm going to flank them with. You might notice I've got a napkin down on my desk here. You want something like a paper napkin or a tea towel or something so that your beads don't roll so much, and if you drop one, they don't bounce. So you might wonder how we're going to hook these to the ear wires. For that, we use head pins. It's like an ordinary sewing pin, except it's longer and it's got a blunt tip. It doesn't taper to a sharp point. Now, some head pins will have an elaborate decoration on the bottom end so that you've got a little bit of fanciness at the bottom. These are just straight. These come in different lengths. You have to make sure you have one that's at least ½ inch longer than the string of beads you're putting on. So I'm going to pick up one of these little seed beads, the black ones, and feed it over the head pin. And then I'm going to put a white one on. If I can find the hole. There we go. And then I'm going to put one of the penguins on, right side up. And another white bead. And another black bead. And then I need to make a loop out of this top part so that we can hook it to the ear wire. I think this at the end here is a little bit too long. It's about, well, it's about ½ inch. Now, how you make a loop is you use a different kind of jeweler plier. These are round nose pliers with the ends are round. They sort of taper to a point so you can do different sizes of loops. I'm going to bend it down a little bit and then I'm going to twist it carefully around the nose of the pliers. This is where I mess up sometimes. And you want it to make a nice loop. And I've got that. And I'm going to find, this one I used a gold head pin, so I'm using a gold colored ear wire. And it's the same thing. I'm going to take my flat pliers and I'm going to bend down a little and I'm going to hook them on. And then I'm going to bend it back up and we have an earring. And then I just do the same thing for the other one. If you're wondering, you can get all of these tools and pins and ear wires and a lot of beads and charms. Whoops, this one doesn't want to go on. Try the other one. You can get all of these supplies at any craft store. Michael's has them, Joann's has them. I'm sure the others do as well. Or you can buy them online. I get a lot of my charms off eBay. They have some really cute charms that you can't find anywhere else. Let's see if I can get this one on now. I see the head pin's bent. Okay, and then I do the same thing. If this was too long, I would cut some of it off with the wire cutters in this pair of pliers, because if it's too long, then it's too much to make a loop. What you can do if you want something fancy, and you're good at this, which I'm not particularly, is you can leave the end longer and leave some space below where you're doing the loop and wrap the end of the wire around that to make a fancy little spiral thing. I do that sometimes, but I mess up about half the time, so I didn't want to do it for the demo. So let me straighten this out a little and find another gold ear wire. And we'll hook that over and bend it back. So that's not too difficult either, although making the loops is a little harder. What takes all the time on these is deciding exactly what beads you want and what order you want them in. So I'm going to unmute everybody. Any questions?
No, that was great. That was great.
Anybody else? Okay, I see we have a couple of other participants. Welcome, I'm Mary Aileen Buss. I'm one of the librarians at Long Beach Public Library, and making beads and earrings is one of my hobbies. So that's what I'm showing you today. So let me put these aside and get the next project out. So my next project is if you want to do charms and beads on the same thing, how would you do that? So I think I've got several things out here because I wasn't sure which flowers I wanted to use. I think I'll use the hearts.
Uh-oh.
Okay, the new people, if you haven't figured it out yet, if nobody told you, double click on the little window with me and you'll get it full size so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so to do both the charm and the beads, you use an eye pin. It's like a head pin, except it's got a little loop at the bottom. And what you're going to do is you're going to hook the charm to the little loop. It's like the ones on the ear wires. It's not continuous, so you twist it gently down and you hook. These are hummingbirds. You hook your charm on and you twist it gently back up until it meets, and then you start putting your beads on the wire.
You're just a little bit out of frame, Mary Aileen, so do it a little bit closer towards the camera. There we go, perfect.
I was trying to bring it close to me so I could see what I'm doing. And then you start putting the beads on the wire. These Millefiori flowers, I think I got them at the Freeport Gem and Mineral Show. The roses came from Michael's. I think it was Michael's and not Joann's. And I put that over, and ooh, that's not long enough. I've got a longer set of head pins in here, I think. Nope, those were the long ones. Okay, I guess I will just have to do one Millefiori flower instead of two. Because you do have to have a ½ inch at least at the top of your pin so that you can make the loop to hang it to the ear wire. Okay, I think that looks good. So I'm going to take my round-nosed pliers, bend it back a little bit, and then bend around into a loop. It's a bigger loop than I really need, but it works. And then I'm going to do like I've been doing on all the others, is I'm going to take one of the ear wires and, whoops, wrong pliers, and bend it gently down and hook it in the loop. and twist that back. Let's see if I got this the right way around. Yep. And then I can do the same thing for the other one. I grab the other, make sure I'm getting the longer head pin of the two sizes I've got here. Yep. And I bend the loop away. And I put the other hummingbird on. And I put the rose on. And I put one of the little glass beads on. And I take the round nose pliers and I bend away. And I bend down around. And twist that down. And I put this on. And I twist it back up. And there we have another pair of earrings. Okay, let's unmute for a moment. Anybody have any questions?
Thank you. It's excellent.
Okay, anybody have any questions on this one?
No.
Nope. I'm going too fast for you. Should I slow down?
No, it's good. It's good for me.
Okay. Okay, so now you saw that I didn't have long enough eye pins for all the beads I was going to use. What do you do if you want a long strand of beads and don't have a head pin or eye pin long enough? Or what do you do if you want it to be flexible instead of stiff like the pins are? Well, there's another technique for that. It's a bit more advanced. On the other hand, it's the same technique that you use to make bracelets or necklaces. And for this one, we're going to use wire. This is, I forget whether it's called craft wire or beading wire, but it's comes on a big spool. I've had some pieces already cut left from another project, so these are longer than we're going to need. And I'm going to put some more of those little cats. These are purple. And I've got lots of beads that I want to put on. Just trying to get everything out of my box here, excuse me. Okay. So how do you get the wire? You can't exactly tie it into a knot, and it would be pretty ugly if you did. Let me stop for a moment. Wire comes in different grades, weights. This is 19 strand wire, which means that this thin little thing is made up of 19 strands. That's how it's so flexible. The really high quality wire is 49 strands. That's more delicate than you need for most things, but if you're trying to make a necklace out of seed beads, you'd want the really delicate wire. You can also get 7-strand wire, which is pretty stiff. Mostly you don't want to use that. About the only thing it's good for is if you're making a necklace out of really heavy beads and you want them to stay still. Well, the way you get it to stay on is you use, how does this thing open? Watch out, they're about to fly all over the room if I get this open. How do I get this thing open? Sorry, slight technical difficulty here. This is a new batch and I've never used it before. And it doesn't want to open up. Okay, what we have here, can you see these tiny little things? These are called crimp tubes. They're very small, but they actually are tubes. You put one of them over the end of your wire, and then you take your charm and you put that over the end of the wire. And then you take the end of the wire and you bend it back and stick it through the tube again. You want a piece of wire that's at least 2.5 or 3 inches longer than the earrings you're trying to make, or the necklace. Because you need to leave yourself a lot of room at the other end so you can bend it back and put it through the crimp tube at the other end. Now we don't want a huge loop like this. So once I've got it in, I hold the crimp tube and I pull on the long end of the wire and it tightens up. You don't want it too tight because it needs to have room to swivel the charm so it can dangle on the end. So that's a pretty good length. And now we're going to take, you can just squish that with a pair of pliers, but it looks pretty ugly and it doesn't always hold very well. What you really want to use is a crimp tool. This has, you can see the roughness in here. I put it on the first farther back and squeeze, and it puts a little groove in it. You probably can't see that, but there's a little groove in it. And I give it a quarter turn, and I put it through this front thing and squeeze it the other way so it folds over. And let me see if I can get that. There we go. And that holds it tight. It's not going to come out. Now these crimp tubes, once you get them crimped, they're kind of ugly, but you can cover them. They make special crimp covers. They're sort of C-shaped. I don't know how well you can see that. They're sort of C-shaped and hollow inside. Put it carefully. Yeah, try not to drop it. Put it carefully over the tube so that it goes around the wire, and you hold it in place while you squeeze it together gently with your pliers. And it looks like you've got an extra bead on the bottom, a nice silvery bead. Again, these come in a bunch of different colors. You can match them to your project. And now we're going to start putting the beads on. I'm going to do a tiny little seed bead, and I'm going to use one of these big purple ones. If I can find the hole. And another tiny little seed bead. And you want to make sure that the beads go down over both bits of wire that you've got here, over the extra loose bit as well as the rest.
Mary Aileen, would it be possible to tilt your camera like a little bit up more? Because we see more of the, yeah, there, perfect. That should be the perfect
Okay,
angle.
if it doesn't shift. Okay, sorry
Better.
about that. Is that better?
Yes,
Yes.
perfect.
Okay,
Excellent.
sorry about that. So we've got this on the wire, and then to put the this on, we do the same thing we did to get the charm on. We take a crimp tube. They make crimp beads too, but the tubes are better. They hold better. So we put the crimp tube on. We put this over here, and we feed the end back through. This is why you want your wire to be longer, because it's much easier to feed that back through if you've got a nice long length of wire. Now this can be a little tricky adjusting it so that you pull it up here without getting it too far away from your beads. Whoops, and this came up. I'm gonna have to go back. The end came out while the beads were sliding around on the wire. So I've got to get that fed back in. Let's see if I can do that. This is a pair of rubber-nosed tweezers. Now you can see how much trouble I'm having feeding this in. When I started doing this, I didn't know about leaving a really long end, and I was always dealing with these tiny little bits of wire that did not want to feed through. There we go, got it. But now I've got way too much room above, and I need to move the crimp farther down and keep adjusting it back and forth until I've got it about as good as I'm going to get. And I crimp that one in place. Use the farther back one to put a fold in and give it a quarter turn and flatten it. And I'm going to cut some of this end off because it's longer than it needs to be at this point. Oops, there. And I'm going to feed the end back in through the beads. And again, this is why you want to leave some length on it, because this is really hard to do if you didn't leave enough length. At some point, it's going to come out the side and we can pull it. This one doesn't want to go in. There we go. All the way out the bottom because it's long, and and now I'm just pulling it through until it pops flat. And then I will cut this off very carefully, as close as I can get to that without cutting anything I don't want to. There we go. And now I just need to put a crimp cover on the other end. You want to leave the crimp cover on the second end for last, just in case you have trouble with it. Okay, so I put it carefully over that, and I squeeze it together with my pliers. And there's my first one. Now let's unmute for a moment in case anybody has any questions. Okay, anybody have any questions?
I do, Mary Aileen. It's
Yes.
Stephanie. With these seed beads, you go back through that twice with the 19 strand wire, or you just go back through the big bead twice? Like when you were threading back down.
When I was threading back down, I went through the seed beads twice. Basically, it needs to go through the couple of beads closest to your crimp.
Okay, and the 19 strand wire is what you're using, so that'll go through a seed bead twice?
Yes, that's why I was having a little bit of trouble, because the first bit of wire was so long. It's actually 3 strands of wire through most of these beads.
Okay.
And the hole was
Thank you.
just barely big enough to get it in.
Okay.
Now this
thank you.
19 strand wire is very thin.
Okay.
It's not any thicker than the 49 strand wire. It's just not quite as flexible.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else? Anybody have any more questions? Okay, so now I'm going to do the other one, and we do the same thing again. And hopefully you can see well what I'm doing this time if you didn't the first time. So Tom, if you could mute everybody again. Now I'm just going to use the shorter bit here that was left over from the first one, because that first one wire was longer than I needed. So I take another little crimp tube and put it in. And I take the charm and I feed it back through. And I grab the crimp bead and hold on the end and pull it down. And then crimp it so that I make a fold, and then turn it and flatten it so that it's held. And I'm going to cut a little bit of this end off, not too much, but a little bit, so that it doesn't come quite so far up the line of beads this time. That'll make it easier to put that final one in. Okay. So another one of these seed beads. But if I wanted to, I could make really long necklaces, earrings with a whole bunch of beads on the wire and just have them dangle down. I'm not quite sure how well it would work without a charm on the end, because you'd have to figure out a way to have it anchored. Oh, I forgot to put the crimp cover on. Let me do that now. You might have to wrap the end of the wire around the bottom bead and then it would look a little odd. Never experimented with that. But, so, before I go any farther, I'm going to stop and I'm going to put the crimp cover on. And then the beads slid off while I was doing that, so I'll put them back on. Something rolled off into my keyboard. That'll be interesting later. Oh, and I got this one, the crimp a little bit too close down there, and it's not twisting right. There it goes. And my next bead. And the top one. And then I'm ready to finish this one off. So another 2. And the ear wire. And feed it back in through the tube. If I can persuade it to go. There we go. Pull it down. Okay, that one's good. I think. Yeah. Crimp that into place. And feed the end through. Stephanie was asking about feeding the ends back in through. I've got some cultured pearls that have really tiny holes, and you could get this wire through it, but you wouldn't get another double strand through. So you wouldn't be able to use, whoops, it's hitting something. You wouldn't be able to use those near the end of something that you're using this technique for, because there's just no way to get that second strand of wire back in. You also wouldn't be able to use them with the head pins because the head pins are thicker than the wire. That one doesn't want to go. There we go, I think. Nope, of course it's the last one that's being stubborn. Make sure I'm not getting it tangled up in the ear wire. There we go, there's the end. And I pull it through and I snip it off carefully. And there's our second one.